Pacers at the Knicks, game one tonight. You have the Oilers at the Stars, game one. Last night, Panthers rolled the Hurricanes 5-2. More phone calls coming up. We make way for Wayne Gretzky, the Hall of Famer, part of Turner Sports coverage of the Stanley Cup Final. He'll be in attendance for all the games. Wayno, good to see you again. How you feeling?
I feel older, but it's great to see you. When you get your two youngest kids graduating college the same week, you're getting old. So Thursday, NYU, Friday, SMU, and on to the Stanley Cup semis and the finals now.
Could you give me a shift on the ice?
No. I'll tell you what happened. About the age of 57, I was playing in a charity game. And I came back and I threw my bag down in the hotel room and I said to my wife, that's the last time I'm ever going to skate. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, I was scared to death that I was going to fall and hurt myself. And you can't play this game with fear, right? So it was time for me to officially retire, even though I retired at the age of 39. But I skate every now and then, my son's hockey schools, and I get on the ice. But I don't play in charity games anymore. I don't trust myself out there.
But that's what makes what Jaromir Jagr or Gordie Howe did. I mean,
listen, it's amazing. Gordie Howe got 20 goals in the NHL at the age of 50. Think about that. Jaromir Jagr, I don't know, he's got to be 58. I don't even know how old he is, and he's still playing games. Although he told me one day, he said, I only play the home games now, though. I said, well, that's nice. You're well rested. And Chris Chelios played to 50 years old. And the way he played, he was a maniac at the age of 20 and the age of 50. So I have great admiration for older players, older athletes who've excelled, guys like Tom Brady, guys like LeBron. It's pretty remarkable that you can go on at that age. Because, Dan, you've been around sports a long time. The athletes are better today. They're bigger, they're stronger, the coaching's better. And that's not a knock to the past. That's just progression, right? 20 years from now, it's going to be better today. It's different. Every sport is different than it used to be. But the athletes, I think, are better today.
Did you lift weights?
Brett Hall had the greatest line of all. Somebody said to him, do you lift weights? And he said, I've never seen a barbell score, but I've seen a lot of dumbbells. We used to do a training camp. We would come in and they'd have these kids from the university that would do our, I guess they were seeing what kind of shape you're in. So they had this, you had to bench press 195 pounds. And I would just look at the bar and I'd say to the kid, just mark me down for one. I didn't even try to lift it. And then I said, how many sit-ups did I do last year? He said 7. I said, mark me down for 8. So say they would think I was getting better. But listen, I did 8 push-ups in training camp and scored 92 goals. I did 125 sit-ups my last year at training camp. I got 9 goals. There's no correlation, right?
When did you realize that Ovechkin could get your goal-scoring record?
Well, when he scored on his back against us when I was coaching in Phoenix in about 2007. I came in the locker room and I think it was Rick Tocchet said, the writing's on the wall. This guy's going to be chasing you down. No, we knew. He was, listen, I said this, there's only 3 guys, him, Messier, and Gordie Howe, that could play with the finesse, the goal-scoring touch, and the physical part of the game. Those 3 guys did that. Now, maybe Mark had a little bit more creativity with passing, but scoring, Mark scored big goals all the time. Gordie Howe scored big goals. But if they weren't scoring, they'd run through you. And that's what those 3 guys have in common.
But explain to us that it's the hardest thing to do, aside from hitting a baseball, but you're on skates with a stick and guys are trying to beat the hell out of you. When you have the puck on your stick, like, what were you looking for?
Well, people always say, how did you score that goal? Did you see that open spot? Did you scout the goalie and know maybe where his tendencies were and what was his weakness? The game is so fast. To me, I was just shooting, trying to get an open spot, trying to hit the net. It was my biggest pet peeve in the world when you go all the way down the ice and the guy would shoot the puck and miss the net. And if you look at Mike Bossy and Brett Hull and Ovechkin and Yuri Curry, Mario, they didn't miss the net. They hit the net. You can't score if you don't hit the net. It's common sense, right? This game's too fast to. Now in practice, you get out there and you put up targets and you work on things like that. But during the game's too fast. You're just trying to get it to the net.
Do you hold a grudge against anybody?
Do I?
Yeah, from your playing days?
No. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite. I have so much more respect for the players I played with and against today, even back then. Now, listen, there's a lot of guys I didn't like because they're trying to win and I was trying to win. But today, even the guy that played me the hardest, the guy like Dennis Potvin, if he called me and needed a favor, I would try to drop everything, try to help him. You know, we become one. There's one common thing that we all have as professional athletes. One day we're going to be alumni. We're all going to be retired, right?
Yeah.
So I got a great deal of respect. Now, there's a lot of guys that probably hated me when they played against me. There's a lot of guys I didn't like. But when it's all said and done, it's like the other night when you saw Dallas. Jamie Benn and Scheifele battled for 6 games like real men. They were physical, hard, played hard. And that's what makes our game so great. The emotions that they showed after the game and the sportsmanship and the respect they had for each other was truly remarkable. I happened to be at the game, and I thought it was just amazing.
Talking to Wayne Gretzky, the Hall of Famer, does your wife ever call you the Great One?
No. Every now and then she probably says, why do you think you're the Great One? I will tell you, I was having dinner with Charles Barkley one night in Phoenix, and my son and I, and we're sitting there, and his wife said, "Great One, will you pass me the salt?" And I went to grab the salt, and his hand was already there, and he said, "In this house, they call me the Great One." My son was 15 then. He thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
Where are all your trophies?
I have one trophy here that Rocket Richard gave me, the only hockey trophy I have. And one of the trophies I'm most proud of, I have here, Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. That's the only 2 I have here. The rest are at the Hockey Hall of Fame or in the basement of my since passed parents' house that my nephew lives in, and my trophies are still there.
How important were trophies to you, aside from the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, Glenn Sather had a theory in training camp. I want to win the scoring race. I want to win the best defenseman. I want our goalie to be the best goalie. I want to have the MVP. But with all that, I want the Stanley Cup. So yeah, he put it out there. He didn't hide from it at all.
The difference between playoff hockey and regular season hockey, and it's not, that much different than other sports. Mm-hmm. Maybe the NFL is still each game because there's only 17 games. But what is it about playoff hockey that it's just different? It's different than any other sport.
It really is. Although I'm a basketball fan, I think the basketball has been phenomenal this year, the playoffs, and you can tell those guys have gone to another level. Our game has just always been that way. And I think one of the things that happens is it's so hard to referee our sport. It's so fast. And our referees do a great job. And when we get in the playoffs, the referees tell both teams, look, you can play hard and you can play physical. Just don't be stupid. We don't want to be the difference in the hockey game. And so the game becomes extremely physical and very fast, and it's hard to win in the National Hockey League. And I thought Carolina played a really good hockey game last night. Unfortunately, they're playing maybe the best team in the last 3 years, and they get beat. And now you play all year to get home ice advantage, and you lose it in one night. And so I expect and anticipate Burns and company will come out flying tomorrow night.
I don't know if you're like Peyton Manning. When you're watching, Peyton gets upset, when he's watching bad football or somebody does. I don't know. How are you similar to Peyton Manning when you're watching hockey and you're like, why are they doing something? Or you get, visibly, upset with what you're seeing?
No, not at all. I don't critique it. If anything, I'm the opposite. I just sit and enjoy it. I really appreciate good plays. I really appreciate good coaching. And you can see the 4 teams that are in the finals, they all have good coaching, and that's part of the reason they're there. And then they have the skill and the talent to go with that. So, no, I know how hard these kids work, and I never critique, no.
The oddest place where you were recognized is where?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe Rome, Italy. I don't know. You know, it's amazing. I retired 25 years ago. I think I get recognized more now than I did in 1999. But people are nice. It doesn't even faze me. You know, I, people are always nice. Everybody has their opinions, who the best player was, who the best teams were. We all do. That's what makes sports great. And we don't have the right answer. It's your opinion. It's simple as that.
But Michael Jordan thinks he's the greatest basketball player of all
Well,
time.
he was the greatest athlete, I think, of all time.
Do you
So
think you're the greatest hockey player of all time?
no, not at all. I always said that Gordie Howe and Bobby Orr were the two greatest hockey players that ever lived. Um, I made my life because of those two guys. They took the NHL to another level and gave me an opportunity. No, I would never say that, and I mean that sincerely. I tell my kids that. I say it publicly. I have too much respect for both those players that I would think that I was better than they were.
But if I said I can wipe away everything you did in hockey, but you would have been a Hall of Fame baseball player for the Tigers.
And I would have told you I was the greatest baseball player ever. I can brag about my baseball.
But you told me years ago that that was a goal. Like you loved the Detroit Tigers.
Oh, I really did. I grew up an Ernie Harwell fan. Mickey Lolich, one of the great days of my life. I watched Mickey Lolich pitch when I was 13, and I wrote it in my book. We're playing in Detroit one day, and trainer came in and said, "There's a guy out here who wants to sign his book. Can I bring him in?" I said, "Sure." It was Mickey Lolich because I wrote the story in the book, and so I got a chance to meet him and get a picture taken with him. And then through those years, Mark the Bird Fidrich came, and then when Sparky Anderson went to Detroit and they won the World Series. So I grew up a huge Tigers fan. Now I love the Blue Jays, but they weren't there till '76. So I'd been 15 years in baseball by the time the Jays were sort of founded.
Were you starstruck first time you met Jordan?
Yeah, I think everybody is. Like I said, to me, the two greatest athletes ever were Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali. And I got a chance to be friends with both of them. I got a chance to spend a lot of time with Muhammad Ali. I went to New York in 1978 when I signed the WHA, and I was with Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull. And I was this kid, just starstruck, right? And we were in the Plaza Hotel. It was the first time I'd ever been to New York. And there I was standing there. Muhammad Ali came over to shake Gordie Howe's hand, and I almost fell over. I'm like, oh my God. And then 5 minutes later, Pat Boone came over to say hello to Gordie Howe. And I said, is there anybody this guy doesn't know? I don't know him. So he fascinated me from the very first time I ever met him.
Yeah, but they have to be starstruck when they meet you too.
Oh, I don't think so. I hope not, because I'm like you. I'm a normal guy.
Well, you are. You're so approachable, and I liken you to kind of Joe Montana. If people see you, they don't realize that guy did what he did in his sport. Like when you see Montana, he looks like he's a kicker. You don't think that's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Like you're disarming because you're very generous to people and very gracious.
Yeah, people are nice. And listen, I got everything in my life because of hockey and because of fans. But I remember our sons played together, and I used to love the fact that Joe was there because we go to the high school football games, and nobody even cared that I was there. Everybody was bothering and getting pictures with Joe. he made my life in high school that much easier.
But it's been a pretty amazing career. But like any goals what's left here for you?
Oh, I don't know. Right now, I'm proud to have five grandchildren and two more on the way. And, family's for me now. And, I did my hockey thing and I loved every minute of it. Now I'm a fan. I enjoy being on TNT. They're wonderful people, and the people we work with. And Liam is unbelievable. He's our quarterback. And, he does all the legwork and all the heavy lifting. And I just got to sit there and talk hockey. How nice is that? You get to sit there and I don't have to worry about getting hit or run or knocked over the head. I can just sit there and have fun.
But you're healthy.
Very healthy.
Okay.
Yeah. Although like everyone else, I had some precancerous things taken off my face in the last few weeks.
But no concussion stuff like.
If you ask my wife, she would tell you I had a lot. I forget things. I just told you an hour ago. You must have. I said, back in those days, they told you to go home, have a beer, go to bed, have an aspirin, and we'll come and skate it out of you tomorrow. You'll sweat it out.
Do you have any pictures of you fighting, like frame photos of you?
Fighting?
Yeah.
There was one
because it didn't happen very often, but I'm curious if you.
Listen, I was talking about my Sports Illustrated trophy. I had one fight really in my career. Neil Broughton. It wasn't even his fault. I jumped him. So the guy flies from New York, and he's out there giving this presentation about how my sportsmanship and how I don't fight. First shift in, I'm fighting Neil Broughton. And I get to the bench, and I'll never forget, Mark Messier said to me, "What were you doing?" And I said, "I don't know, but Dave Semenko says the good news is that's not even a fight. That's called cat fighting, so that doesn't count."
But did you throw a punch?
I don't even remember. I think I kind of, I don't know. We got to the penalty box, and I remember I looked over at it and I said, "I'm sorry."
I apologize, Neil.
I think he was more shocked than the 17,000 people at the game and the 19 teammates I had on the bench going, what was that all about? One night we were playing in Chicago, and Bob Murray he's always whacking me and hacking me, and I got so mad I grabbed him and he threw me on the ice, and he had his hand like this, and I'm looking over at our bench, and there's 5 guys with their legs over the boards. And he's holding me. He goes, "No, don't move. I'm not going to hit you." And I said, "I'm moving." And I got back to the bench, and I told all the guys, I said, nobody's allowed to touch him the rest of the night.
But did you give, like Dave Semenko, an extra gift? He was your protector. You had to have one on each team, I'm guessing.
In those days, everybody had sort of that guy, right?
Yeah.
You know, the one thing I did give him, I gave him my car that I won at the All-Star game in 1989 in Edmonton, I guess.
Yeah.
So I brought him downstairs after the game. I said, here's the keys. You can have the car. So he was great. He was a great teammate to all of us. And he was beloved by the fans. The fans in Edmonton, he was as big as anybody on that team. They loved him to death. And, you know, he was witty. He was fun. And he didn't really want to fight. He only did it if he had to. If he saw somebody abusing a teammate, he never went looking to hurt anybody. And that's the other thing about our league, especially in those days. Those tough guys didn't want to go hurt guys. They didn't want to go after those guys. They fought the big guys, right? They fought each other. It was kind of a code.
All right, handicap the teams that are left in the playoffs. Give us a tutorial on what do you think is going to play out.
Well, I like all 4 teams because I think all 4 teams are well coached. And I think all 4 teams right now are getting goaltending. I think Ottinger and Bobrovsky have proven to be 2 of the elite goalies. Skinner last year got to the finals and had a good run. He's got 2 shutouts in a row, so he seems to be on a roll. Anderson in Carolina, he didn't have a bad game last night, but he didn't have a great game last night. The thing between Carolina and physical, I think Carolina's a little bit faster, and they go. Florida is smart and disciplined. This general manager has made some great deals. He's got Tkachuk, he got Bennett, traded for Seth Jones, Marchand, on and on. So it's tough to knock out the Stanley Cup champions, right? So I like Florida. But Roddy Brind'Amour and I were roommates at the Olympics in 1998. So, you know, my heart's with him also. And he's done a phenomenal job. Now, everybody knows Edmonton, that, you know, that's where my life was made. And I always pull for them. My brother's the assistant GM. They have the two of the best 3 players in the National Hockey League, and Draisaitl and McDavid, without question, is the best player in the game. They're going to have to contain him. Pete DeBoer has done a great job in Dallas. They made incredible trade getting Rantanen. I think it changed their team. The team that Dallas is playing, or Edmonton's playing this year in the semifinals, Dallas is a better team than they were last year, and that series went 6 games. So this series, I predict to go 7 games.
My best to your wife and the family. Great to see you again. And
Nice seeing you, and it's always a pleasure. I hope everything's going well for you and your family too.
thank you, bud. Good to talk to you
All right.
again.
Take care. You guys all take care.
It's
Bye,
Wayne.
Fritzy.
Oh, how about that?
Shout out from the great one. What?
Wow. Oh,
Bye, Fritzy.
yeah.
Jealous.
Super
Yeah,
jealous.
Wayne wasn't on the bus last night coming back from the Emmys.
He would never have
He
said
would
that.
never have said
Part of
that.